All right, Bang Bang. Today is Tuesday. It is July 26th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. It's myself. I'm here with Chief. Chief, how are you today?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, I feel like I'm back. I'm recovered. We're in the swing of things now.
Headache's gone?
Headache's gone.
All right, good.
I'm back on I feel like my normal routine of going to bed at a decent hour, and I feel like summer's behind me now.
Okay.
Good. I'm ready to get back into just having a normal work week.
Good.
Yeah.
There we go. So today we are getting into a little bit of the Y2K shit in July.
Yeah, why
randomly.
not? Yeah.
Not topical, not even season worthy, anniversary worthy.
Nothing.
But it's here.
But it was it came from a text from you.
Yeah, exactly.
That you're interested in. So
I was looking at lists and shit like that, just cool stories from the 90s and whatnot. And
you're let's talk about that time the world almost ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About how we just thought that the turn of the calendar was just going to just
fuck everything
wipe us
up.
all off the face of the earth.
And it was one of the, do you remember it?
Do I remember
the countdown?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, okay.
I do.
Because you were what?
I was 10.
10? Okay.
I was 9.
9 turning 10?
I was 9 turning 10,
okay.
yes. I was
you were
9.
a 90 baby?
Yep.
Okay.
Born in 90.
Yeah. So I was 13. And I remember the hysteria vividly, but I didn't understand. What? Calendar turning? But everything was it was all over the place. People were talking about it. I remember Family Guy did an episode about it where they had this clip where it was Happy New Year, and then planes dropped out of the sky and nukes went off. The Simpsons had a thing where the waffle iron became evil, or the waffle maker became evil and was attacking people. It was such a thing in pop culture and in the news media, and that kind of added to the hysteria of something that was actually a real problem. But anything, once it kind of gets in the hysteria sells, and that was kind of a big factor as to why it was probably more alarmism than a real problem.
Yeah.
So
I just remember having it. We had a red clock in my basement.
Okay.
Just the countdown.
For Y2K?
Yeah, but
what else did you have in that basement?
I don't know, just whatever. We had
bottles of water.
Yeah, we had water.
So you were preppers.
A lot of CD. Well, no, we didn't have anything like that. But it was just more so just a New Year's clock, to be honest.
Okay.
But I don't know. I still remember it vividly.
Yeah. You know who I wish was an adult at that time?
Who?
Our friend Dante.
Oh, dude.
Dante would have been in a fucking bunker in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And just being and we'll see him in 2010, because that's when the nuclear fallout's going to dissipate.
Yeah. For people that don't know, he sends us seeds stuff sometimes.
Yeah. When shit was going down in 2020, and I actually the more things are going on with the seeds and the farming, and I have a package that I bought as a joke because Dante was talking about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm it was $80 on Amazon, something like that. And I am the proud owner of 20,000 seeds of a variety of fruits and vegetables in my freezer. And now I'm kind of glad I have it. Okay. Because all the farmland's getting bought up. There's no fertilizer. Food prices are going crazy. I don't have any place to plant anything, nor do I know how. But I might give them to my sister, who does have a garden out in the suburbs. My sister did cucumbers and zucchinis
nice.
and pumpkin. She did all kinds of shit. All her little herbs. She's only 2 years older than me, but it feels like she's 20 now. She had kids, and we're just not the same anymore. So she's full on suburban mom.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, just carrots in the backyard.
Nice. Yeah, and they're delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she did a good job. So
that is good.
Yep.
Sorry, where do we start here with the Y2K?
So it was a real problem, okay? And it was a problem that, like anything else, it was something that people knew about, okay? Early on, there was this guy his name was Bob Bemer. And so when computers were becoming a thing, and they started becoming a thing in a commercial way for industries, as early as the 50s. And I remember, you'll see in different, if you watch Mad Men, Mad Men had a scene that show us in the 60s where they their big selling thing was we're going to be a data-driven company, and we have this computer, and so they had this computer that they installed in the middle of their office, and the footprint was 25 by 25, like an enormous thing. And it was like, someday we're going to have a computer that can fit in a single room. But back then it was like this massive, expensive thing. And this guy, Bob Bemer, was like, hey, this in 1958, he was like, this is a problem where we're calling these date codes, and they had 2-digit date codes. So if it was March 3rd, 1997, the computer would read it as 030397, okay, or whatever the year was. And so in 58, he's like, hey, 42 years, like, this is going to be a problem. But everyone's like, shut up, man. Like, just shut the fuck up. Like, that's 42 years. Like, shut up. And the reason everyone was like, just shut up, is because these computers were so big and they were so expensive that every time that your computer like recorded a date and stored it, it was basically cost like $1. So if you're doing that across time and across many different data entries, the ability to shave 2 digits off of your memory, which is what you're basically buying off different computer chips and storage facilities and things like that, it would be very cost effective to just be like, we're going to cut that code and just do 2-digit dates instead of 4, because 2 digits is going to save us theoretically across a period of 10, 15 years, like millions of dollars, like genuinely millions of dollars. So they were like, hey, so like there are people who were like raising alarm bells about it, like basically right away when computers were really starting to be introduced into the world. And everyone's just like, we will figure that out later. Like, we're just going to save money in the short term. And like, they're like, things are updating all the time. Like, it'll be fine. And then they never really updated it. So the problem was, when you get into the 90s, no one even knew, because the programming was so old, no one even knew how the dates were going to read. Okay. Was it going to flip back over like 99 to 00? And was that going to read was it going to read it as 1900? Some of them were like, maybe we'll just go to 2000. Other ones were like, it'll be 1900 or 19100. So like the first 2 digits never. So like that creates like this system of having a lot of problems, where it's like you could have some banking problems. You could have, the airplanes and the train systems, like they don't know what time it is. And so they're like, it could trigger and then because all these things are networked together, that if you have system failures based on code on one thing, that people were worried that it would trigger like a widespread failure across many systems, and that it could affect banking, it could affect utilities, it could affect power plants and the grid and all these different things, to the point where it's like, well, we have air traffic controllers, and like, we can't find the planes because we're tracking them on a certain time, and now they're just like in the past, according to the computer, or they're in the future according to the computer. And people just like, they're like, we don't know, like it was like a fear of the unknown. And so in 1995, that's when that phrase Y2K was coined. And once it had like a kind of a catchy name like that, the media picked it up. So it took the media like a year, and then that became a story. So in 1996, you started seeing people talking about it all the time, became a thing, like, Barbara Walters, 60 Minutes, 2020, they're all doing like these stories about Y2K. And this is still, so if you're thinking about like, you think about how our parents are with computers now, this is now 20 something years ago. So those shows were geared towards our parents. Yeah. So people who are like, what a fucking computer? Like, so it was like something that they don't understand, that they don't use like ever. And it created like this kind of palpable nervousness about this mysterious technology and the future. And it kind of created like this firestorm that was rooted in a real problem. But it sounds like more and more like the hysteria was kind of the bigger problem. And it got to the point where the U.S. government in 1998 had to step in. Okay, so the government was like, all right, we need everybody to work together, because it is a real problem. Okay, whether or not the world was going to end was probably far-fetched. Okay, but there could be issues. So the government stepped in. It was like everybody has immunity from being sued, but we want everybody, and like your code and things like that will be protected from like a financial standpoint if you develop a way to like change things, but you have to share. Like we want everything open. So if somebody has a breakthrough, like if Chase has a breakthrough, okay, I'm just making up the names here, but if Chase has a breakthrough on like how to change the code, well, you are obligated to share it with Wells Fargo, like that sort of a thing. And like cross industry, cross everything. And you've heard of FEMA?
Yeah.
So FEMA is like, for people who don't know, is like a disaster relief. So like Hurricane Katrina, they were in the spotlight because people are like, oh, they really fucked that up. And so FEMA is always like emergency disaster response arm of the government. They were in charge of this. Like that's how scared people were, is that Clinton, president at the time, put FEMA in charge of it, and they spent $100 billion to help rectify this situation. And while it, like I said, I keep saying it was a problem, it became almost like a cottage industry, and like that kind of exacerbated some of the fears and some of the problems even too. So you had, like Leonard Nimoy would do like a documentary or like how to survive. Okay. Like he did like a Y2K like special. There was like Y2K cookbooks. There were people building like these bomb shelters. There were people like buying all sorts of waters and stuff, like, red alarm clocks and things to stick in the basement to survive the apocalypse, because nuclear power plants are going to melt down and nuclear bombs are just going to go off because of these computer glitches. And there was a segment of the population, even if it was small, that were like very concerned, and were like, they're preppers. They're just people who are kind of into that shit, where they're just like, they hear something, it's like the apocalypse is coming. And, we're a religious country. So there are people who are like, this is it. You see the people on the street being like, the end is near. Well, there was a lot of the end is near people running around in 1999. And that was like part of the problem, was because as it became closer and closer, the problem wasn't going to be Y2K. It was going to be the hysteria around Y2K. So people were like the financial service industries with like cash. Okay. People were very concerned that there was going to be effectively just like a run on the banks, where, after Christmas, people were just going to go to ATMs and go to their banks and be like, I need all my money. Like, I think it's going to disappear when the clock strikes zero. I'm taking out all my money. So it's like, no, sir, like it's going to be fine. Like your money will be there. And they would just be like, no. So if you have enough of those people making a run on the banks, then now it's like things are FDIC insured. So it probably would have been fine, but it would have been like, we have all this cash coming out of the banking system. And it's like that famous scene from It's a Wonderful Life.
Mr. Potter,
like, and they're like, hey, like there's a run on the bank. And he's like, well, I don't have your money. Your money's in his house and it's in his mortgage. And it's, because that's how that system works. So the people are like, if people are taking out all their money, even if so it transfers over from like this digital thing on a bank that the banks can kind of like push around to like, no, I need my cash now. And so people were worried about that. People were worried that people were going to take so much time preparing, and they were going to they're going to fill up all these like jugs of water to prepare. So like the utilities. So if you have like a segment of the population, even if it's like 4%, and they spend a week doing nothing but filling up 5-gallon drums of drinking water, well, that really taxes the system. So then it's become a thing where like FEMA came out and was like telling people it would be a good idea to prepare to have a week's supply of rations for just in case, because they're looking at like, man, if there's so many people, but that just makes the problem worse, because then it's like people who weren't scared were like, well, the government's telling me I have to be prepared for a week. So then they're running to the store and getting bottles of waters, and they're running, they're collecting water and food and things like that. So now it's like the problem, it was like isolated to a few kind of crazy people gets like bigger because the government exacerbates a problem that the media was already propagating to get viewers and not clicks back then, but like viewers and sell papers and magazines and all those books and all that sort of shit, that it was just basically kind of like something that got out of control because people got scared. And instead of like having the proper messaging.
But hey, how about this? I'll tell you something that is a great invention of the new millennium, and that is the GameTime app, the exclusive ticketing partner of Barstool Sports. GameTime is a ticketing app that makes it easier than ever to score last-minute deals to tickets to sports, concerts, and shows, and they guarantee the lowest price. They've cracked the code on how to score deals on last-minute tickets, and you can find MLB tickets for under $15 all in on GameTime. Yankees tickets as low as $14, Red Sox $14, Mets $13, Braves 14, Cubs 12, you name it. Your MLB team is on that list, and the prices are going to be around that range. So, like I said, name your team, and GameTime will have you on the hookup for deals to get you out to the ballpark. And the best part is you get $20 off your first purchase. Download the GameTime app, go to the accounts tab to create a login and redeem code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download GameTime, last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's as simple as that, folks. Go use some GameTime and go to your concert or go to your sporting event. There's still time. We got August, we got September, still some great weather around the corner for you to use the app and get out there and go to an event. Okay, Chief.
So like there were people who were, I would say, maybe taken advantage of, and then there were people who were like really profited. Those people who were like sold they were like doomsday conventions. Okay. Like, here's how you can survive for a year after Y2K. And they would sell tickets and people would give speeches. And like I said, there was like that cookbook and there was like all sorts of different things where people were like, well, we gotta be prepared for this. And then you know who else really benefited from it? You'll never guess. India.
Oh, wow.
So India had like a ban previously on importing like goods and stuff like that in like the 80s, and they started to open up their country more around that time. And they had this it's almost become kind of like a meme, but it was born in the 90s, like the Indian IT guy. Okay, so they had like the amount of work to change the software was a lot, and it was more than the US workforce could do. So they went to India, and it was expensive. So you go to India where they have all these, engineers, and they work for much less. So people speculate that this was the thing that kind of like it genuinely grew the Indian middle class, because you had all these tech engineers who now had a ton of work because the United States had to outsource some of this coding and some of these like bug fixes to India because they didn't have enough IT professionals in the United States in 1998 when this program was going to go on.
Fucking Dell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then in terms of like things that actually happened, it was almost nothing. Okay. Like there were a couple of nuclear power plants in Japan that gave off false alarms. Okay. So they had to like go check it out, and they're like, that was a bug. And, a couple like other things like that. Oh, you'll like this one. There was a guy who rented a movie and went to return it after the new year. Okay. And they were like, well, sir, you have late charges. $91,000 in late charges, because their system said that movie was 100 years late. Okay. So they just spits it out like it's 100 years late. You owe us 91,000 and change, buddy. And so like that was kind of a story that took off. And then for all the preparation that the government was doing, $100 billion, FEMA, this, that, there's an organization, it's called the U.S. Naval Observatory, and their official job is to keep the time of the United States, which is actually like very important. So if you're the FAA, if you're the military, and be like, we're gonna strike, we're gonna send a cruise missile or whatever, and we're going to hit some terrorist camp at a very specific time, 5:41 a.m. and 22 seconds. Like your time has to be bang on all over the world, with every single place has to have the exact same time. And I have a hard enough time keeping like my clocks and phone and TV and all my microwave, car. It's tough to like have all your clocks lined up. So that their job, the U.S. Naval Observatory, is to keep the official time of the United States. They got fucked up. They had a bug. So when their clocks, when they hit midnight, their clock said 1900, 100. So instead of having just be like 11, 2000, it was 11, 1900, 100. So, we went like way into the future. So they were like little, and they eventually fixed that. I'm sure it was pretty quick, but they had like little issues like that. I thought that was kind of funny that of all the people that like had the bug, it was the government agency in charge of keeping time. Yeah. Like they're the ones who fucked up the time thing.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So that's like the Y2K story. And it was one of the things that I remember. I remember like the episodes on Simpsons and the Family Guy, but I didn't like know about it. Like my family wasn't doing doomsday prep. I remember going to like a parade or something like fireworks with my family in St. Charles, and like, all right, well, it's midnight, time to go to bed, and then watch college football the next day.
Now, did they ground all the flights?
I don't think so. I think it kind of like they kind of figured things out.
We're good.
Yeah, like
fuck. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to fly at that hour.
Yeah,
I don't know. You know,
I'm trying to think if there's like an equivalent thing that I was like genuinely scared of, where I'm like, like I can't do it right now.
Yeah,
but because even like I'm trying to think of how I was with COVID, like traveling with COVID. I think I just did it. You know, like I just.
But it was a while though. Like,
what was a while
before you like really flew again? I think I flew that August.
Yeah, I'm
sure. March, I flew that August to New York.
But it was like not really an option to go anywhere. Like everything was shut down. Yeah, but I think if it was like, hey, you have to fly, I think I would have just flown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I flew the 15th, that Friday before.
Okay.
Like 2 days before everything shut down.
Well, that was my younger sister's wedding.
Oh, really?
So I remember like she got married on Saturday the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
The 15th was Sunday, and it was like I remember coming home and on like Sunday afternoon and walking over to Mariano's just because like, and I hadn't, it was wedding weekend, it was a family wedding, like, I wasn't really like paying attention, but they had announced that like the shutdown was happening on Monday. Mm-hmm. So I went to Mariano's just because like I needed like basic, it wasn't like to prep, picked over, and I was like, oh, this is kind of fucking scary. Yeah. So like that actually freaked me out when I walked in there. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And there's like no toilet paper, there's no paper towels, there's like
people walking around in masks, and it's like that's when you weren't supposed to.
Right.
Remember early on it was like, no, like
right,
it doesn't matter.
I remember making a joke of it. Like I went, it was, who was the guy who was the Jazz and the Nuggets, who was like
Rudy Gobert.
I can never remember his name for some reason. And so like Rudy Gobert did that thing, and then he got COVID. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what are you gonna do? And then I went to the Blackhawks game that night, and I'm like, no COVID here. And then like during the second period, the NBA announced that they were canceling the rest of the season, and it felt like you could see people like on their phones, like everybody like realizing what's going on all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it got very quiet. And if you like heard somebody cough, like everybody would turn their head.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, it was like creepy. Mm-hmm. And then everything was, everything was canceled until, I think it was like you said, until August. Yep. So that's when hockey came back at least. So that was weird, but I did buy seeds because Dante was like, let's get these seeds. And he's like, the seeds are going to be the new currency, man. Like, it's going to be fucking crazy. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, I'll buy your seeds. And, but that was kind of it.
I forgot where I was listening to this at, where you have a realization too, where like, could you imagine, like if we lost power, like how fucked everything would be?
Yeah, that's one of those things. It would be chaos, like kind of overnight.
Yeah,
and I remember hearing people saying like, oh, like if terrorists ever really wanted to take down the United States, they would coordinate some sort of it, or Russia, if they wanted to do it like through hacking, they would go after the power grid. And because of imagine if it's just like I get like a panic when my phone isn't charged.
Yeah.
Okay. So now not only can you not charge your phone, but you can't do fucking anything.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid, if there was like a big storm, I remember a couple times the power, my brother was like a baby. So he's 10 years younger than me. And I remember there was some big winter storm and we lost power for like days. And we ended up going to a hotel because we're like my brother was like 3 months old. And it's like, we have to be able to keep the infant warm. And I'm like, well, that's fucking scary. But I feel like now when we have storms, we lose power for like max 15 minutes. And you know, obviously depending on the level of the storm and where you live and all, it's going to be different. But like, I feel like back then you lost power longer. I don't know what we would do if we lost power. And the other thing that's like a big threat to that, allegedly, is those solar flares. Okay, so like if there was like, they call it, I think it's called a coronal mass ejection, if I'm remembering the term right. And basically the sun like burps. Okay, so have you ever seen Aurora Borealis? Mm-mm. So that's like the northern lights. You ever heard of that? Where like the sky like lights up green, or, you know, and that's like a solar flare hitting, this is my understanding of it, hitting the Earth's atmosphere and lighting up at night. But that's like particles from the sun that are ejected at like, you know, it's like the speed of light, and it hits the Earth's atmosphere and bounces off, but it creates like those cool lights, night lights in the sky, the Aurora Borealis. But they say that if you had a large coronal mass ejection, like a large solar flare, that it could knock out everything. Like the International Space Station would disintegrated, our satellites, all your GPS, all your TV, all that stuff, internet gone. And like, so that whole infrastructure could just be easily wiped out by the sun just giving us a burp. And then like, it would be chaos in the streets if that ever happened.
That'd be fucked up.
And there's no way to plan for it or stop it. And you know, you look at Elon Musk is like sending up satellites all the time, and all like Google sending up satellites all the time. Like there's so many satellites up there now that we depend on that we don't even really know about. Mm-hmm. That if they got fucked, like we would be in big trouble because no one knows how to do anything.
No.
Without tech. So that would be bad. I had something else I want to say about that. But yeah, that would be a big problem.
I think I saw, because when that Texas winter storm, they all lost everything, right?
Yep.
I think I saw like the number is so astronomical. Maybe Chaps tweeted this, where like there's like a new tax or something
to pay for it
that people have to pay for the next like
so that
70 years.
I wouldn't be surprised. And Texas is, you know, they're the only state, and like Texas people love to like talk about this and brag about it, but they're on their own power grid. So for whatever reason, like when they were an independent state for a while, but that was like before electricity, but they've always kind of maintained this more than any other state, this like illusion, or maybe not even illusion, but an air of independence. Like, you know, there's this group of people who pops up, these people in Texas, they want to secede from the United States and be their own country again and all this kind of stuff. And so part of that was going into having their own power grid. And then when it went out, because of that ice storm, they were fucked. So now it's like, instead of having like a national pool to help pay for Texas's power grid, like if that same thing happened in Oklahoma, well then FEMA would come in and they would pay to fix it. But Texas is kind of self-reliant in that way, and with that comes some hardships where like you citizens have to pay for it directly, instead of being able to be like, hey, people in Vermont, you're going to kick in an extra 2 pennies this year, and all that's going to add up, and and then we all pay for it instead of just the people in Texas. So I don't know about that, but I would imagine that's how it goes because they're on their own grid.
So it's like apparently it's over. I can't find the exact right number, but Jab said it's the people. Someone asked him and said the people need a deep dive into ERCOT, and Chap said ERCOT's incompetence during one winter storm will cost an additional $45 a month for each household in Texas over 25 years.
$45 a month?
Yes.
So how many households are in Texas?
He goes, and someone said that's over $134 billion. So I know them, like it's like an astronomical amount.
Yeah. So if it's 45 times 12, and this quick Google search said there's 9 million households. So what'd you say it was? It was 45 a month?
45 a month, yeah.
So 45 times 12 times, let's just call it 10 million. Yeah, that's fucking huge nut.
Huge.
Yeah, billions.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so much so that my iPhone calculator gave me 5.4 E9. Whatever fucking, like, it's just my Apple can't coordinate it or can't calculate it. Yeah,
it's crazy how shit like that just like,
and it's stuff you take for granted.
Yeah. Oh, you 1,000% do.
Yeah,
1,000%.
Our life is so easy.
Yeah, so much different than where if something happened, there'd be serious problems.
I feel like, and this is like goes back, like we've talked about like the ancient people and like Library of Alexandria and all that stuff. Like if we lost the power grid, like think of all the information that is just stored on the internet. Like so much stuff like that we know would just be lost forever.
Yeah.
Like we used to, when we were kids, like the Dewey Decimal System, and you're looking up fucking encyclopedias and, and that was where like we kept like a lot of our like knowledge was in like in fucking books. When was the last time there was like an update to an encyclopedia? There's nothing. It's just Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So if Wikipedia is lost forever because of fucking power grid or solar flare or whatever, like there's so much inherent knowledge that we've like collected as like a species that would just be poof, gone.
We have to learn again.
We have to start all over.
Yeah.
Be bad.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, all right then, Chief. Thank you.
Yep.
That's it, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. We will see you then.